You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
This is Steve Sansweet of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to the 602 Club.
Welcome to the 602 Club, Trek FM's local watering hole, and yes, we are back for seconds here in Zombieland, as we're going to be talking about Zombieland Double Tap, and with me, as she is every single week, who's looking for the double scoop, Christy Morris.
I'm back, and you can call me Georgia, but that's all you're going to get out of me, because you can't get too attached.
I mean, I don't want to. You know, you never know if you're just going to die. I mean, that would be awful. Yeah, I can't spend my time getting too attached to you. Anyway, Christy, how's it going?
Good. I'm really excited to talk about this one. I don't usually like sequels, but you'll see what I thought of this one toward the end. And I went to go see it by myself in Movie Tavern, where I got the fancy recliner, so...
Ooh, fancy recliner. Look at you. That's awesome. Yeah, I do love those fancy recliners. We don't have any theaters that really have the super fancy recliners here. So, it's kind of disappointing, but yeah, it's okay. But before we dive into the movie, we're really excited to get to Double Tap, but you can find us all over the place. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you hit us up on Apple Podcasts, give us a star rating and review. And actually, we got a review. I subscribe to this thing that helps us see reviews from all over the world, Christy. And we've got one from Brazil, the Brazil store. So, and they said, a damn good podcast, excuse my French, but I can't wait for a new episode every week. You'll probably... not like all the movies reviewed, but the ones you do, it's well worth your time. 5 stars. And they said, live long and prosper. So we really appreciate that review there from Brazil. It means so much to us that people all over the world like the show and listen. That's so cool. And yes, we do believe it to be a darn good podcast. There you go. So, yeah, thank you so much. Again, that really just means a lot. You know, you spending your time to give us a star rating review, it definitely helps out the show. And so, again, find us wherever you get your podcasts. We are everywhere. Podcasts can be had, and if you are on Apple Podcasts, please do give us a star rating review. Help people find the show. Let them know what you think of it, and we'll read your review out on the podcast. So, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com. You can also find us on the Babel Conference, which is our listeners-only discussion group there on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, you'll just type Babel into the search field. If you're on our website at trek.fm, you can get there as well through that. Any of the show pages, there's a button that says discussion. Click that, and then you can talk to fans from all over the country and all over the world, obviously. If we got listeners in Brazil and just everywhere. And then last but not least, send us an email. Your thoughts. Christy and I do love conversing with people about what they think about the shows, and you can do that at trek.fm/contact. Choose a show. You just choose the 602 Club, and that comes to Christy and I, and we'll be able to talk to you. So make sure that you do that. We would love to hear your thoughts. Really excited to get to Double Tap, and I'm kind of wondering just kind of what you thought about the idea of coming back to this one as a sequel. You know, because it's always interesting, the idea of like, do you go back for seconds on a story, or do you just leave it as is? So how do you feel like they did with a sequel?
So I do think that the first film doesn't really set itself up for needing a sequel. I think it wraps up in a nice little package, its own story arc, and they could have just left it the way it was. But I'm actually glad that they made this one, because I feel like, being that it's more of a comedy than a horror movie, that you can do that easier than you could if it was following a dramatic storyline. I think too, it's really great the way that they come into this one as far as tying the two together with acknowledging there's been a time gap and saying, since last time you saw us, this is what's going on, or these are some things that we've learned along the way, because that is kind of the natural way your mind would go based on where the last film ended, where they're driving off together and they, decide that they've found home with each other and they're going to go off and find another place to visit. So I like the way that they come in. And I think in general, I just usually don't like sequels, but every now and then you get one that's really worthwhile. And I think that this was worth it.
Yeah. I think that, what you're saying I really like, because that is something that's difficult about sequels. Can you make one that is as good as the original and doesn't just feel like what you're doing is copying the original and just kind of doing the same thing over, but maybe quote unquote bigger and better? And so that is something that I think is really interesting about this movie. And one of the things you kind of mentioned is, really the first movie is a comedy. And I felt like maybe in this movie that they maybe leaned more into the comedy than even the first time. And I thought that was really interesting idea of, allowing the comedy to be the bigger part of this movie than even the first. Because one of the things that we had mentioned about the original is the fact that they did a good job of not only having there be the comedy elements, but kind of some of those horror elements. And I did feel like they really leaned into the idea that this is more a comedy than anything else. And in some ways, I would say, and I don't know if you agree, but I didn't really feel like there's a lot of horror elements to this movie. I mean, I felt like really the idea of the zombies, they're just there, kind of to be really just, they're there for comedic effect. Like there's not really a horror element there at all.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I mean, really, you don't feel any real danger for them at all until you're at the end, with all of the zombies crawling up on the scaffold or whatever that our heroes are standing on in Babylon. That was when I was really thinking, oh, wow, they're actually going to kill off all their main characters, possibly. But I do think that, like you're saying, they did lean more into the comedy on this one. And at first I wasn't thinking that because of scenes like Wichita coming back after leaving suddenly and seeing that Columbus had slept with someone else. I like those scenes for adding something more emotional to the movie. But yeah, I think that you're right, that they basically decided since the last one, maybe it was a little too icky last time. Like the way I mentioned that the zombies were a little disgusting. I mean, they still had some of that this time, but it felt like they weren't taking themselves as seriously with trying to make the zombies terrifying as much as just going, yeah, they're kind of stupid and gross. Like you've got the Homer or whatever. And I like that play on Madison, you thinking she's becoming a zombie and it was just a nut allergy.
I guess one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, do you feel like that was the best choice in the movie? Because you rightly pointed out, I think, is that you kind of lose the element of thinking that there's really going to be a moment where anybody could really truly die that matters, I guess. And so like specifically that moment with Madison, I thought it was kind of a strong, at least the first time seeing it, I thought it was really strong that they would kill her, and kind of give you that somberness of that, oh yeah, this can still happen. Like people can still die, people can still get bit by a zombie, So what did you think about that? Do you feel like maybe they needed to allow there to be some sort of like drama element or horror element to things, or did the comedy work enough for you so that you didn't necessarily care?
I think that it didn't work as well. I think that they should have possibly just left her dead, because then it would have had that effect, like you're saying, that it had some weight to it, and that it makes you realize people are still capable of being lost to, the infection that causes them to become zombies. So, yeah, I kind of wish that they had done some more with that, because I do think that sometimes the comedy feels like the movie's all fluff. What about you? Yes.
No, 100%. I think you just kind of nailed it. Like, that's the thing that I kind of ended up thinking to myself was, the first movie was able to insert comedy into a zombie movie, but still have the elements that had the horror, and so. And I would say the rated R-ness of the horror, like where it's just scary enough, where you're kind of you are kind of worried about the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like you obviously, if it's a movie with like Woody Harrelson and these type of people, you're not thinking that they're going to die, right? You're that's not necessarily something you're worried about. But I felt like, the movie did a good enough job with itself to make me feel like that possibly could happen in the original. Like, there's always a chance, that you could go that way. And I think you're absolutely right in that in this one, by just allowing the comedy to reign and never giving us a moment of seriousness, and even I would say, taking the moment of seriousness away, with especially like that Madison scene, where you think that he has had to kill her because she's been turned into a zombie. By doing that, I do think you've kind of lost something with the movie, because even at the very end, like, I think it would have been stronger specifically because the moment where you think to yourself, oh my gosh, it would have been a stronger moment with, is Tallahassee going to sacrifice himself for everybody?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, is he going to make that ultimate sacrifice? And I think they took away that moment because, well, you kind of know that he's not going to die. That there isn't a chance of him dying because they've already, showed you that they're not willing to basically pull the trigger on their characters at all.
Yeah, I think that's something even that we've talked about on other episodes of the show, that although you don't want to just be killing people off for shock value, sometimes losing someone that matters to the story or to the characters is helpful in giving you a more interesting story. And I think that it would have been better, even though it would have been difficult as far as for the characters to deal with. I think it would have been better for Tallahassee to have sacrificed himself. I thought that was what was going to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, not that you, like, again, like you said, it's not like you wantonly are wanting characters to die. But it almost, like, for him, it makes an even better story arc, I mean, like, he's been this character who has always said, like, he's leaned into this idea that he's some sort of lone wolf, even though that's a dumb idea because there's no such thing as a lone wolf. Lone wolves don't actually exist because wolves are in packs and always live in packs. But so anyway, that's just a misconception in the first place. But anyway, that's beside the point. The point being that, he has been that character who's always said that that's what he kind of really wants, and yet this movie and the first movie really show us that he's a character who that's not what he wants. Like, with the moment where we learn that he had a son, and that was something that was really painful for him to have to relive. And in many ways, like you said in the first episode, which I think was so smart, is that, Little Rock had become like his child. And that's part of this movie too, is like this idea of that he has a child and he's a little bit harder on them than he should be sometimes, and can be a little bit overbearing like a classic parent. And in many ways, that's been difficult for Little Rock because, he thinks he's enough, and she desires to have more, which, kind of normal.
Right.
Kind of want to end up maybe, like she says, I'm never going to have a family. I'm never going to have, a boyfriend. I'm never going to have the chance to have more than just this, basically than just you. And yet that's completely normal. And so, like, to take that away, that he would sacrifice himself to save all of them, and kind of complete that story arc in a really cool way, I think is disappointing.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it could have been really strong if they had kind of the guts to go for that, and they don't have the guts to do that. Like, and it's a little bit disappointing, like, because I think it, I feel like I'm rambling, but I just think it would have made a stronger story for the character of Tallahassee.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, going down the route as well with Little Rock, I think that this movie didn't do her as much justice as I felt like she got in the first movie. I feel like her story in this movie really kind of became, she ran off, she meets a boy, they keep traveling around trying to find them, and then finally end up at Babylon and find them there. And it felt like she's a great actress, but wasn't given a lot to do. And then the things that she was given to do were just kind of lackluster.
Yeah, no, I felt that too. I was a little surprised that Abigail Breslin, I felt like, got just kind of sidelined a little bit. And it seems a little strange because, like you said, I think she is a good actress and you expect them to maybe give her more. But they don't really, I don't know. I do feel like she doesn't get the opportunity to really spread her wings and kind of fly in the movie, which is a funny phrase,
right.
But she just doesn't really get that opportunity, and it's kind of strange. I think that just the story of overall for the movie, it feels a little bit slight. I think that they kind of struggled, it felt like, on how to, what to do with the movie. How do we tell the story? Like, what do we do with it?
Like, okay, we're back.
I think they just kind of struggled with where to go with the storyline. And that's one of the things that I thought was really interesting. And it didn't, like, for all the characters, it kind of seemed like a very strange, it just seems kind of a little bit strange. Like, that they didn't have more to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think really it focuses the most on Columbus and Wichita and Tallahassee, which, I mean, in the beginning were the main three anyway, but I feel like now you're in the sequel, you could showcase a little more than just the three of them again.
Yeah. Nope. 100% agree. So I think it is a kind of a good time to kind of talk about, the storyline there then for, because we talked about Tallahassee and Little Rock, but what did you think then about the storyline that we get for the other two characters? You've got Columbus and Wichita, and how do you feel like that played out here in the movie? So
I thought it was pretty good. I think that on Wichita's side, it was a little weak just because of them having her only reason for leaving be that she didn't want to get too attached again. It felt a little flimsy this time because, well, you've been attached to him this long. I guess it was supposed to be the proposal scared her away, but it still felt like, why would it be that bad that she would risk their lives and leave? And then I felt, too, the whole reason that she comes back saying that suddenly her sister ran off with the car. I mean, it was funny saying that she left a note, and then, Tallahassee and Columbus are going, gee, novel idea, leaving a note. But it just kind of felt like her purpose ends up being finding her sister, and that she doesn't really care about anything else. It's just not interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I mean, it was interesting because in the sense, like what you're saying, like, there doesn't seem to be a lot of motivation given to her as a character beyond what other people are doing.
Right. Thank you.
You know, like, and the, then try, like, her response to those other people, which, I mean, okay. But she doesn't seem to have tons of agency beyond herself, other than, you know, she does make the choice to be with, you know, Columbus in the end, which is fine. And I mean, I always expected that would happen. But I do think it's a little bit strange that you don't feel like, it is just strange. Like, she just doesn't have a lot to do beyond that. And so, like, her whole existence in the movie seems to be about her sister and to be about her boyfriend and possibly fiance, which, again, there's nothing wrong with a character, like, having the frustrations of, like, figuring out what it is that they want in life. You know, do they want to be, you know, married? Do they want those kind of things? That's fine. But it did seem like that became her only motivation throughout the entire movie for everything. And she didn't really get a storyline all of her own. And I don't know, do you think maybe that's because in this movie they wanted her sister to be the one who got more of the focus, since she really doesn't get as much of the focus in the first movie? Do you think that's possibly the reason? I
think the reason was just that they leaned too far into the comedy factor, honestly. And not that I don't think the love story was good, especially having it be this love triangle between Wichita, Madison, and Columbus. But it's just that it's like there has to be more motivation than just surface level for Wichita and for Little Rock to make you care about following them. So, like, what are Wichita's other motivations other than finding her sister? Okay, once she does, what are they going to do? What are their goals, I guess, is how I feel. Does she eventually ever want to try to find other people, or try to make a family with Columbus or something?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Like, it did seem to kind of lack more to it than that. Like, you just kind of wanted more to it than that, and there wasn't anything. And that is a little bit strange to me, for that character, because I feel like you would expect more, because, you know, it's Emma Stone. You want her to have more to do.
Yeah.
So, speaking of you know, Columbus, what did you think about his whole, like, love triangle?
I thought it was great, not only because it was funny, but also because I think that it gave that needed emotional piece to the movie, where I felt like otherwise the only thing was Tallahassee feeling like Little Rock is his daughter and she's slipping away. I think that the other piece is this. And I think that it's funny because if you're putting yourself in their shoes, I totally understand that moment where Columbus meets Madison, and then they get back to the White House and she immediately wants to sleep with him. And he's like, whoa. I mean, like, what's going on? And also, my girlfriend just left. She might come back. And so I thought it was funny that they went the route of her saying, it's been years. And she's like, you know, if you're not down, then I'm going to bite the bullet and go for the old guy. I thought that was funny. But I mean, you also understand from her perspective, she hasn't seen another live human being aside from zombies in years, plural. Then her motivations kind of make sense.
So I was thinking about that idea, like, you know, for Columbus, you know, that the thought process for him is really interesting, because obviously, you know, he doesn't know if she will ever come back.
Right.
He has no clue if she'll ever come back. And so I think it creates a fun little, you know, goof for them to play with. I do think the thing that is a little bit. It's okay to do love triangles. I'm just not a huge fan of love triangles. In general with movies, and so this one was fine. I would say this. It's one of those where it's like you don't feel like it's ever going to be like there's really ever going to be a choice, right?
Right. Like you do definitely feel like Madison was just a one-time fling and that he's going to end up back with Wichita.
Right. Because because you like that's who's going to be together in the end. So,
but I do like that they kind of make you question that at first, because Madison genuinely takes an interest in the things that Columbus likes, like his rules. And, it does raise a good point of like, in a partner, you want someone who cares what you have to say. If they never listen to you, then why are you together?
So that's something that I thought was really interesting, because in that part of the story, Columbus really does have a point. He's, you're mean, and I think that there was something that I really liked about that, this idea of keeping people at arm's length, like it doesn't just hurt you, like in the end, it hurts that person that you're with. Yep. And if you continually keep somebody at arm's length, you are going to end up like chasing them away. They're, and so I thought that was actually, obviously it's a very goofy movie, but that's something that I think is really poignant that happens with that relationship. Like when he says you're mean, yeah, he doesn't have a lot of choices, right? But he is actually calling her on something I think is really important. Yeah. Like treating the people you love with honor and respect is really important. And I appreciated that Columbus finally kind of said that to her, because I think it's true. Like she's just kind of mean.
And that he wasn't just joking, that he was calling her out and saying, no, like you genuinely can be really hurtful and you need to change.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I thought was really interesting with the movie is like to kind of get in there and talk about those ideas relationally. A lot of people, you see that a lot. Like people are afraid to get close to people, and I get it. It can be scary to open up your heart to another person and truly give yourself to another person. That's completely understandable. But in the end, you are only hurting yourself and the other person that you say that you love if you're not willing to do that.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated that they kind of play that out in this movie. I think they did a good job with it, in that sense. And I liked that in many ways, I think we see Wichita kind of get called out for it in a really good way. Like, I think it's a healthy way to say, it's not really healthy for you to live like this. Like, and it's not healthy for the people you say you love, and it's not healthy for yourself. So, and the fact that she kind of makes the switch in the end is nice. I appreciated that a lot. So,
I'm glad to hear that, because I felt like that was the biggest thing that made a difference to me in having something of substance in this movie, was feeling like she's constantly locking people out of getting too close, and that at this point Columbus is continually reaching out. And I like the way he proposes, as he says, I thought that something that would fix things would be this. Here's a ring. And she's like, what? But, it was in the words. He goes basically saying there's something wrong. I think this might fix it. And it's like, nope, that just pushed her further away. So she had to learn how to change.
Yeah. That's the thing that I appreciate most about that whole one, marriage is never the answer to the fix of relational problems. But there was an underlying problem in the relationship that they have, and it was the fact that she wasn't ready to fully commit. And, the storyline that plays out for them is that her being willing to fully commit because of seeing, I think, the reasons why, like, you don't know how long life is, and, like, why not spend your life fully with another person than keeping everybody at arm's length, because you don't know when it's going to end, right? And there's a, and again, keep saying it, but like you're only hurting yourself and you're hurting that other person. So I think that's the thing that is really beautiful about their story. It's not my favorite story in the sense because I don't love love triangles,
sure,
and things, but at least I guess theirs is funny. So,
but speaking of the love triangle, I think you already know my new favorite character is Madison. I think I've found my Halloween costume.
Yeah. That was, yeah. So, yeah, let's talk about the new characters. What about her did you love so much?
I think that her timing with the delivery of some of her jokes was the funniest part of the whole movie. I mean, like the part where I literally laughed out loud in the theater was when she turns the binoculars the wrong direction and she goes, "Oh, you're so tiny. No, you're not. No, you are. No, you're not. No, you are. No, you're not." And it just goes on forever. I thought that was hilarious. And I love when Tallahassee says, well, she survived because zombies feed on brains and she doesn't have any. Yes. I got such a kick out of her. And then especially the fact that then they see the clown ice cream truck driving and it's her, like she's back from the dead. Oh, it was just a nut allergy. Everything with Madison cracked me up.
Yeah. I think I thought that she was a really, she was a funny character, and I loved the way that she started to pick up her, sarcasm. I thought that was great.
Oh, yeah, she's learning what it is.
Yeah. And you actually using it from hanging out with them. I think that the thing that she does as a character, she helps give perspective to other characters. Obviously, I think to Columbus to kind of think about what it is he wants. Obviously, I think it does the same thing for Wichita, and it helps make her jealous and realize exactly what she wants. But yeah, as we talked about before, it would have been, I think, a little bit stronger if she had died, just because it would have created some fear for the movie. Oh, these characters can die. And then the problem, though, became so we meet the other two new characters. You get Albuquerque and Flagstaff. And then, they're kind of funny jokes. But then, of course, we just kill them off. So it was a little bit, why are we introducing people that we're just here to kill off because we're not going to kill off any of our main characters? I don't know. That part was I thought that they were really funny, but I also was just oh, okay.
Yeah, I wonder if in that situation, the writers kind of backed themselves into a corner and then said, well, we can't have Luke Wilson and this other guy taking over the whole movie. We've got to find a way to get rid of them. We'll have them get bitten by the T-800s and die off. I think they had to get them out of the way somehow. Yeah. But I did think they were funny. And I love that whole back and forth about, don't you feel like you're looking in a mirror? No, what? That was cute. But I just felt like they could have done something else other than have them die. I did like that whole thing, too, with Tallahassee finally having a love interest. And then it being a love triangle between Tallahassee, Albuquerque, and her.
Yeah, that was the thing. I think that's kind of what made their whole thing seem, those two characters just kind of seem kind of cheap. They were there for the joke and then they were done. Yeah. And because you and again that thing, because you've got Nevada and she has another relationship, and so you just immediately kind of kill him off, and then there's nothing there. They're not gonna, it's not gonna be an issue. And I thought that was kind of the cheapest way to deal with the fact that, Tallahassee likes her and everything, and you just get rid of the competition by having to kill him. I don't know. It just seems like the lowest common denominator of how to deal with something. And then I think it just they just weren't like they're there for a joke and that's it. And I don't know. I was just disappointed that that's all that they were.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I felt like it wasn't even necessary for Nevada's character to have had another relationship other than being the reason that then Tallahassee gets jealous. I think that they were really, literally, just like you said, there for the joke, and then they had to get rid of them. Because although I thought the driveway jokes were funny, it still just kind of served no purpose to the rest of the story that was happening.
Yeah.
It was like they literally took the side road and then got back on the main road.
And that's something I wanted, like you said, I liked that they gave a love interest to Tallahassee. It was kind of funny to see him with somebody who was, slightly as calloused as he was towards, like, people in some ways and relationships and stuff. And I thought that was kind of fun. But, she obviously does care. But I also just thought, I don't know. And I guess, this is part of like being in Zombieland. You just never know who's going to be around. And so, you don't get too attached to anybody. But it was a little bit strange that she was just so open to like being with just anyone who walked in her door. So that was another kind of, and it again, like you said, you're in Zombieland, so the rules seem like they might be slightly different, but it just also seemed a little bit off.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like, first of all, I feel like there wasn't enough building of any kind of chemistry between Tallahassee and Nevada to have it suddenly be like, and they were in bed together. It felt like, they had just met. And then suddenly, they got drunk, and then that was the deciding factor. It felt a little too fast. And then also what you said about how it seems like they're making her out like she's really playing the field with whoever's left that's not a zombie. And you don't really need to go that route.
I mean, you're free to do whatever it is that you want to do, but I guess I wouldn't find myself just giving myself to anybody who came around. But I will say, I have to say that, when they went to Babylon, I really could not stand that they kept making the same stupid joke all the time about group sex.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because, maybe the first time you mention it, okay, haha, that was funny. But then after that, it's like, okay, we got it the first time. You're just beating a dead horse at this point. So, yeah I agree. Yeah. I thought that the best joke that they kept using that I was okay with was talking about melting the guns, because Tallahassee didn't want anybody messing with his guns.
Yeah.
So, and also for the fact that you just want to survive the zombie attack.
Yeah, that part I thought was really funny. That I really enjoyed. The whole gun part, that was excellent.
Like, look, we made this awesome jewelry.
Yeah. What did you think of the new zombies? I
thought that the dividing them up into different kinds of groups, sort of like there's the, bottom zombie that's not really a threat all the way up to the T-800. I loved that. Because you kind of think to yourself, okay, if the world is made up of billions of people and most of them have now become zombies, there has to be some differentiation between them. Because there would be that many, I think it's natural to think some are going to be faster or slower than others. Some may be more intelligent or harder to kill. So I thought that was awesome. And I think that the Homer aspect was absolutely hilarious, especially having it even in the Simpsons font.
Yeah, that was great.
How did you feel, especially about the Terminator jokes?
So I thought the idea of having these different type of zombies was fun and smart, to kind of mix it up. And the idea that, after years going by that, the zombie virus might mutate in that way, felt smart too, So yeah, I liked all of the zombies that they had. I actually love, in the scene where they're trying to get the RV, and he's like, 12 o'clock. Nope, just a homer. Don't waste the bullet, like that was funny, So those are the places where I felt like, that they added the joke there, and it worked really well with what they had created. And, the idea that, you have these zombies, like you said, with the T-800s that are just super strong and powerful and are roaming the plains, I think is fascinating. So, and that has made them stronger, yeah, it's great. So, I had no problem with it. So, I also, you mentioned in our outline, I thought was kind of fun. Like you said, they have the cars, and the whole joke about this is just the fact that, they've been driving in these cool cars the whole time, and they get stuck in the minivan over and over again, which that was also part of the movie that I thought was, just worked as a great joke that they kept having to drive the minivan. And I get it, I don't love driving a minivan either.
And it was like an old beat up, like Chevy minivan from like the 90s, I think. And so Tallahassee, man, I felt for him having to go from the Beast to that. And especially to, if you know anything about cars, the difference in the engine power is going to be stark difference. And then him thinking, oh, finally, I've got my RV. We're hitting the open road. We got lots of space. And then the tire pops. It's just, that's perfect comedic timing because irony is not lost on him. The one thing that I realized that we're missing was he didn't get any Twinkies this time.
That's true. There were no Twinkies. See, one of the things that I thought, they played that whole RV thing for a massive joke.
Yeah.
Like, they just built that whole thing up for them to, like, get in the car and then blow it. So it was, and that's one of the places where I felt like the movie itself, kind of like we talked about earlier with the humor, is that the movie never quite seems like it has enough of a plot to add like 2 hours, basically. So it's like we add this, 10-minute scene that really isn't going to have any impact on the rest of the story whatsoever. It's funny, but we needed another scene to almost like pad the movie. But it doesn't really have any impact on the rest of the story or the plot. And again, it's because the plot's not that, and I mean, there's not a lot of plot.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of lacking where you feel like we said before about Wichita, for example, what are their motivations? What's their end goal? Okay, we're back in Zombieland. What do they want out of life that they have left? So I think that they should have focused more on that with writing this. But I mean, I still think it was a fun ride, and I did mean to say when we were talking about the cars, I love that they introduced the monster truck, and that it has, I think it's the Dukes of Hazzard horn. Yeah,
that was pretty funny.
And that it says "Big Fat Death" on it. I think that especially when they had Nevada come back in with it and rescue them in the monster truck was awesome.
Yeah, I thought that was really enjoyable, and it was a very fun scene. And obviously, it is a place where they kind of played their hand as to what was going to happen, like it was going to flip and everything. But it was such a fun, goofy scene. I really did enjoy that. And of course, then you get the gauntlet, which was really enjoyable as well. So I think all of that worked and was really fun. So I have no complaints about that. I think, they just did a good job with that. I thought it was funny that they made the joke about him being like, part Indian and made that a whole thing. I'm like, so he's like the Elizabeth Warren of Zombieland? So, I just thought it was really funny to go there. I also really thought it was funny how they make fun of hippies. They really don't like hippies in this movie, which I thought was also quite hysterical. Because, yeah, they just show them to be not good for the world, which I thought was really funny. Like,
but it's weird.
Yeah.
Because they're in so many scenes, it feels like they're downing them, but then they end up having the ultimate home where they all feel like they could stay. And that's what's so funny is like it kind of gets turned around on them, and actually the hippies are great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it is interesting too because then they don't stay there. Like they make their way to wherever it is they're going to go, which I thought was really interesting. So, what was interesting to me is how did those hippies build that place in the first place?
Yeah, where did they get all this scrap metal?
Yeah, any of them were good at anything. So it seemed a little, I don't know, I don't really buy them being able to do that. It was funny nonetheless. I just that whole section was very funny. I did enjoy the whole gauntlet part. Like I just thought that was really funny, and like it played off really well.
Oh so. Yeah, when they're all holding the pieces of metal and ushering the zombies through to fall off to their death.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was great.
How did you like Berkeley? By the way.
Oh gosh.
Speaking of hippies,
he was a little much. Yeah, He was a little annoying, and like one of the parts of the movie that I kind of didn't really enjoy as much. I could have kind of done without him, but whatever.
But you didn't like all his original songs that he wrote?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
It got me when he started singing Freebird, and I just put my face in my hands, and I was like, oh, please tell me she doesn't believe this.
Yeah, that was enough. No, I was like, please, no. And then, no, she didn't. So, Good for her. One of the things that was interesting, because we talked about this in, I think, we talked about this in the last movie, and I thought that this was kind of an interesting part to this film. Home is where the family is, and that kind of idea, and we see them all kind of struggling with this idea of like they're not quite comfortable with where they are and necessarily who they are, and so this whole theme about home is with the people that you love, and it doesn't really matter where you are, just as long as you are with those people. And also just that kind of along with it is not taking for granted the people that you're with, and how easy that is to do, and how that kind of leaves us in the lurch a lot of the times. Like we get so used to people being around us that we end up taking them for granted, and it hurts our relationships, and I think that's one of the things we saw with Wichita and Columbus, but it's also something that we see, as much as you see Little Rock want a relationship, her desire and her lack of seeing what she has right in front of her face hurts her, she loses that perspective. And so I liked that the movie kind of continued some of the themes that we got in the first one and kind of built on them about this idea of like that, home is not about a place, it's about the people that you're with. And I thought that was a good addition to what we got in the first movie.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I felt like the joke that Columbus makes, although it's bad, that's why they call them your homies, because home is when you're with them. But I do think that it proved the point of, especially in a world where it's post-apocalyptic and everyone pretty much is a zombie other than a few people, that you can't really have one physical home, for one thing, because it could constantly get overrun by zombies at some point. And two, that you can't take people for granted because they could at any point get bitten and then they become a zombie and you possibly have to kill them off. So I like that from those aspects, it encourages that home is where your family is or the people that you love, but also it applies to anyone not even in that situation. I think that it's really sweet to seeing that it's still that core group of four that really care about each other. And although they've met some new people along the way, that they end up deciding to come back together.
Yeah. Well, and that they have a better understanding of what the other person needs, which I thought was kind of nice.
Absolutely.
You know, like I feel like that's something that's really important, like is for us to understand the people that we're with, you know, and what it means, like what it is that they're struggling with, and kind of trying to understand what it is that they need in their lives, which I thought was great. You know, that's really important, and it's really difficult to do as a human being for another person, you know, is to try and put yourself in their shoes and be willing to listen when something, you know, when you realize that you may not be the best thing for somebody right now, or you may have been hurting somebody and you didn't realize it, which I think is, you know, that's one of the things this movie does, I think, pretty well, is show people being open to knowing when they're not being the best for somebody. Like, they're not doing the best for somebody, which is great. So I liked that. And yeah, it's a small part of the movie. Like, it's not the biggest part. It's just really not. But It is great that they actually tried to play with some of those themes from the first movie. I thought that was good. So,
and I thought it was good too that they added some new rules that added some humor, but also things that made sense.
Some of those rules that we had mentioned that they had, you know, they actually add into the movie, which is great. That was really fun. Like, I think that was kind of fun to see them like remember some of those rules and then play with them. That was great. And you know, that was semi-funny that they had the whole idea of the commandments, you know.
Oh, yes, having Flagstaff versus Columbus and talking about, well, you know, mine are just rules, not quite as hardcore as commandments.
Yeah, it's like not quite as biblical.
Right.
That was great.
And like, well, it's not a competition.
Yeah. What did you think of the stinger at the very end?
I mean, I don't know. I guess I did like it and think that they needed to kind of give Bill Murray some justice, but it felt a little empty with what we got out of what they made. Didn't you feel that way too? Like, it was just kind of, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was fine. I don't think it was anything that was like necessary,
right,
to do. It was goofy the way he survives, you know, his first day in Zombieland. But yeah, I mean, it's fine.
Like, I mean, I haven't seen the Garfield movies, so I didn't get the whole hairball joke.
I thought it was funny that in the mall that they go to, there is a poster for Garfield 3 in there. So
no, I didn't even notice that.
So, I don't know, where do you come down ratings-wise?
I would say it would be a little bit better than middle of the road because of some of the big things that we talked about, mostly being that it felt very all about the joke and not as much about the substance. I would give it I'm going to go for a half this time and say a 6.5 out of 10 pink fur coat pink fur coats. I was trying to figure out what you would call it. Like a pink puffy coat with a fur hood?
Fake fur. Fake
yes.
fur coat.
Yeah, it's definitely fake.
I think that I'm right there with you. This is like 6 out of 10. It's just above average, but it's pretty average as a movie. I mean, it's still funny, and like it's still a good
we'd
laugh.
see it again.
Yeah. And I did end up seeing it twice, partly because wasn't quite sure if we'd be able to make it on Sunday together, my wife and I, but we did. I got to see it twice, and I still laughed, but I definitely saw the fact that really this is just a comedy movie, and it kind of lost some of the things like we talked about that kind of made it special, and so on a whole, it's still enjoyable, and I don't know if it's one of those that I'd say, yeah, you should go to the theater and see it,
You mean you don't have to see this one to understand the first one?
No. But I am wondering what your recommendation will be.
Actually, this is funny. So, I do have a recommendation, but it's actually a blast from the past.
Oh,
I was looking through Twitter the other day and happened to see a funny video by Jerry O'Connell. Don't know if anyone remembers who that is, but I said hipster moment, but truth. I liked Jerry before it was cool on Sliders on the Sci-Fi Channel. So
nice.
If you guys haven't seen the show Sliders, it was like people that are friends that travel through time to try and stop bad things from happening, and funniness ensues. See the episode about hot pants. And I think actually Jerry's brother is in that with him.
Nice. He also, he's the voice of the animated Superman on many of the recent DC animated movies. So,
there you go.
He does a great job. Yeah. So,
and apparently he is Rebecca Romijn's second husband.
Hey, yeah, he is married to Rebecca Romijn, so good for him. She actually plays Lois Lane in many of the new movies. So, I'm going to recommend something that I've been reading for a while now. It's Scott Snyder's run on Justice League has been excellent after what he did with Metal for DC, and it's just been really, really good. I mean, they are putting the DC heroes through hell right now as the Legion of Doom has been rising, and, well, it's not going well for the heroes at this moment. So it's just been a really strong run, mainly because it's diving deep into DC lore. And it's been a multi-universe spanning epic. And I'm really excited to see how it's going to come to a close. So I recommend it if you're into comics. I've just really been enjoying it. Scott Snyder's a fantastic writer. His work on Batman was amazing at the beginning of the New 52, and his work here with Justice League has been fantastic, following up on what he did for Dark Knight's Metal. So, yeah, check it out. It's totally worth reading. So, Christy, if people, though, want to catch up with you and see where, what else you've got going on online and with other podcasts, where can people find you?
You can find me in the Babel Conference talking about all of our episodes here. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at Bespin Bell. And I do a couple of other shows. I do a show once a month on the Fantatrax network called Planet Leia, where me and 5 other women from around the world talk about Star Wars. And I also do a show with my friend Teresa called Sabers and Spells. We just released our episode talking about season 3 of Stranger Things and teasing for season 4, which we hope is coming next summer. Fingers crossed. And then lastly, I do a 5-minute segment on my friend Riley's show, The Star Wars Report, called Fashion in 5 once a month, where I talk about men's and women's Star Wars fashion. So stay tuned for that for October.
Awesome. You can find me here on the network also doing another show. It is The Orb, Chris Jones. When we get a chance, we talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I'm doing 2 shows over on the Nerd Party Network. One is called Owlpost with Dre Kaufman. Each week we talk about one of the chapters from Harry Potter. We're going through the Half-Blood Prince at this moment. And then you can find me doing Aggressive Negotiations with John Mills. Hey, it's a Star Wars podcast, but we don't just talk about news and stuff. We dive into the nitty-gritty of Star Wars each and every week, so check that out. And then last but not least, I'm doing a Cinema Stories with my good friend Courtney as we talk about films through the lens of faith. And in fact, actually this week, we are talking about The Princess Bride. So thank you, though, so much for joining us.
And y'all come back now, you hear?